Marty Krofft, along with his brother Sid, are the creative forces behind the world of Sid and Marty Krofft. Together, they've brought us the likes of H.R. Pufnstuf, Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, Land of the Lost, Mutt Stuff, and Wonderbug, just to name a few. I sit down with Marty Krofft to talk about his legendary career and his advice for puppeteers and show creators on this episode of Under the Puppet. You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Welcome to the show that talks to puppeteers about the art and business of puppetry. My name is Grandpa Choco, and this is Under the Puppet. Welcome to Under the Puppet. Quick reminder to stay tuned after the interview to find out how to enter this episode's giveaway for a $50 gift card to puppetpelts.com. Well, this episode, I sit down with one half of the creative forces behind Krofft Productions, Marty Krofft. Along with his brother Sid, Marty Krofft is responsible for bringing to television countless shows, such as The Banana Splits, H.R. Pufnstuf, Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, Mutt Stuff, and many, many more. Here now is my interview with Marty Krofft. Well, Marty Krofft, thank you so much for being on Under the Puppet today.
Oh, this is a great thing to do.
Your father, Peter, was a puppeteer, right?
Well, he actually helped my brother. You know, there was generations that I never figured out what they did and who they were. But he toured with my brother. You know, I was still in school. I was 10 years old, 11.
Yeah. I've heard you say that your dad gave you the advice of get the best people to work on your projects, to make the costumes, to do the music. Is that something you still follow to this day?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Most puppeteers don't like us because of that, because they usually do everything.
Yeah.
So we always went out and got the best talent we could find at the time. You know, like Pierre Balmain, the costume designer in Paris.
Yeah.
So, you know, then we had Henry Mancini at some point do the music. And Johnny Green did the music. And we did one night at the Hollywood Bowl with the puppets, with Johnny.
Yeah. And you had Frank Paris who built Howdy Doody built puppets for you too.
Frank Paris, who wound up, he was living on Gay Street in Greenwich Village, and that's where our puppets were built at the beginning.
Yeah.
And he did do Howdy Doody.
Yeah. Well, I heard that when your brother Sid was out touring with his puppet shows, you sort of borrowed his puppets to do your own shows.
Well, you know, there was an extra set of puppets in the garage, so I pulled them out, and I went out when I was about 15 years old and played the Catskill Mountains. I went up to Montreal, played nightclubs. So I did some television shows, and then when I heard Sid was coming back, I put the puppets back in the garage.
Well, and you taught yourself puppetry, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, completely self-taught.
Self-taught.
Yeah. And were these marionettes mostly at that time?
Yeah, they were mostly marionettes at the time.
Yeah.
Which are the hardest puppets to make look lifelike.
Yeah.
Which we were able to do. And we, always looked for the puppeteers who could do that.
Right. Right. Do you still nowadays pick up a marionette, or are you finished with that?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I have marionettes in my office, so I look at them. No, I don't. Yeah. I mean, I will at some point show someone how I can make a marionette walk, lifelike.
Yeah. Did you you later joined Sid in his shows and assisted him?
Right. My brother was doing his own act, and then his assistant that was working with him bailed, so he called me up and said, "Would you come to Wildwood, New Jersey? I'm with Liberace and want you to help me." So from there, I stayed with him and moved to California with him when we ultimately came out here to work with Judy Garland.
You were kind of the one who took the shows and made it more into a business, right? It was your business sense.
Well, I think that you're right. I did take the thing out of an act, which, was hard to survive with, and turned it into the best business we knew how to do. Show business.
Yeah.
Not a great business, unless you're Universal or Disney.
Right. Well, do you have any advice for puppeteers who are looking to raise money for their own projects?
Absolutely. Definitely. I don't give advice, but in this question I will.
Okay.
Change your profession.
Don't be a puppeteer.
Don't be in show business.
Yeah, you sound like my mom. It's that's her advice.
Listen to your mother.
That's other good advice.
I wish
yes.
I had done that.
During those early days, you produced a pilot for a TV show called Here's Irving. How did that opportunity come about?
You know, I don't remember exactly, but we were doing the act, and I think we knew somebody at Paramount, and they were looking to do a pilot. They had their independent company there, and I think that's how it happened. So while we were in Vegas, appearing in Vegas with, I don't know if it was Judy Garland or Tony Martin and Citrus, I don't know which star, but we would then commute from Vegas every night, real late at night when the show was over, and then come back to Vegas the next day.
Wow.
And we shot over on Sunset and Van Ness at KTLA. So we did the pilot there, which it never went anywhere.
Yeah.
But it was interesting.
Yeah. And I heard during this time, maybe when you were working in Vegas or something, that you got some business advice from Walt Disney.
Well, it wasn't really in Vegas, but it was at the Polo Lounge at the Beverly Hills Hotel.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in there with Tony Martin and Sid Charisse, and I think Judy Garland and Sid Luft were there. They were staying there, and we were having drinks, and a man walked over to the table, and I didn't know who it was, and then he said it was Walt Disney. So he sat down, and then Tony or Sid Charisse said to him, "Do you know this is Marty Krofft?" When he was in Vegas with Judy, they flew in all the stars. So Walt was there, so he saw the puppet act. So the advice he did give, he said, whatever you do, don't sell anything you create. And then he said, the hardest thing I'm going to tell you is to make sure that you fight for your name above the title. Everything else doesn't count.
Right.
So those two things I did live by. Of course, he didn't tell me how to save my money, so that was a big problem. Well, I'm still working.
Right. Well, in 1961, you and your brother created a show called Les Poupees de Paris. And can you tell us a little bit about that show?
Well, my brother was at the Lido in Paris before, a couple of years before, and in Lido they had all those big shows with showgirls, dancers, and then they had acts. They put the acts in front of the curtain while they're setting up the stage in the back for the production numbers. So my brother came into me one morning and said, look, we should do a show called Les Poupees de Paris and make it adults only and build it like the Lido in Paris. So we did. We had ice skaters. We had an ice skating rink, swimming pool on stage. We would have the puppets in cages over the audience being tracked in. I mean, we did everything like the Lido except with puppets.
Yeah.
So that show played to a lot of people, a couple of million people.
Yeah, and you had a theater here in Southern California.
Oh,
right?
yeah, more than one, but we did. It opened up first in the Valley,
yeah,
in Sepulveda, a place called the Gilded Rafters. And then we wound up at PJ's, the first disco in the country. And they built us a theater next door. It was on Santa Monica Boulevard and Crescent Heights. So that was, so we really went from there. We went from there to Vegas, Seattle World's Fair, New York World's Fair. So the real thing that we're doing right now, which puppeteers will be happy to know, I am now in the process of seeing if we can reproduce Les Poupees de Paris and do it again.
Oh, wow. That would be great. Yeah.
And where we're going to do it is a secret.
Okay.
It's a secret to everybody else, including me. Don't know yet.
Well, hopefully you find that answer to that secret soon.
Right.
And one thing I thought was interesting about the show, and maybe you're planning on doing this when you remount it, is that you had a tradition of inviting the audience backstage to see the puppets after the show.
We'll always do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a big attraction. Now, if we have 600-700 seats and they all show up, that's going to be a trick. So we better get a room with a big, big backstage. But the audience, we always spoke to the audience. Either Sid or myself were with the show. Now, we had 2 Les Poupees at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So we had one in L.A. and one in Seattle. We would have one in New York, one in L.A. So, with those 2 shows, we employed about 25, 30 puppeteers.
Right.
So this could be a good thing.
Right.
But they better get ready to do string marionettes also.
Well, I will. I'll leave my resume here so
Good.
You can check it out. Now, mentioned on the show before is a puppeteer named Tony Urbano, who worked with you for many years. And did you meet Tony when working on Les Poupées?
You know what? We met him. He was involved with Les Poupees de Paris, so that was early. So Tony was around doing a lot of good creative stuff.
Yeah.
He built the puppets. He was a good puppeteer. I remember when we did the Dean Martin series on NBC, and we had the girls in the backstage puppets. Tony was one of the puppeteers.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I just saw a clip of it on the internet, so it does exist.
Yeah.
Les Poupees does not really exist anywhere. I think there's 1 or 2 things out there. But in those days, I don't have a picture with Judy Garland. You're not going to carry a camera around.
Right.
So today you got your phone, and everybody does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with selfies.
Right. Right. Around this time, you also began creating shows for theme parks as well. How did that opportunity come about?
Well, we were at the New York World's Fair with Les Poupees de Paris.
Mm-hmm.
They built us a theater, 1,000 seats. And of all the shows at the New York World's Fair, the Radio City Music Hall show in the Aquacade, the New York City Pavilion with Dick Buttons, Ice. Then there was a show To Broadway with Love. Next door to us, a big Broadway show. And those were the people who owned Six Flags. They also had a log flume ride behind our theater. So I got friendly with Angus Wynn, who was the owner of Six Flags, and he knew we were doing this adults-only puppet show. But of course, in New York, they wouldn't let us take the bras off the puppets, which was kind of hysterical. So and Angus said, you got to come to Dallas, to our home office, where we have a park, and we're building one in Atlanta, and let's see if we could build you a theater, and you do a show for the families. So that's how it all started. So we wound up in all the parks. We wound up being creative heads of a lot of different creative things at the parks. We built rides for them. Mm-hmm. So we did all this in L.A. and shipped it back. So that's how we wound up doing that, and then ultimately got our own park in Atlanta.
Yeah.
The world is in Marty Krofft.
And when you're kind of known for puppets, but then someone asks you to build a ride, do you just say yes? Do you just say, yeah, we can do it? Or
well, yeah, I think our whole goal was to be beyond being puppeteers.
Right.
And I think we were showmen, and we knew how to gather the people. And, we were in L.A., and, God, when we did the park in Atlanta, we must have hired 75 people from Disney, WED. And, so we went off and we built the rides. An Okie Finoki ride in Atlanta.
Right.
Right. A ride in Dallas, one in St. Louis. They're all vague right now. But, including the puppet shows that were the big attractions. Yeah. We had 1,000-seat theaters in each park.
Yeah.
So, it wouldn't be a bad idea to go back there. But I don't think they're doing those kind of shows now. I think most of these parks now are ride parks, thrill parks.
Yeah.
Not show parks for family shows.
Yeah, every once in a while you get some puppets in a park, but not.
Right.
It's not a regular thing like it was. How did you get the job building the suits and consulting for Banana Splits?
Well, Hanna-Barbera knew what we did, and we had this show business factory, and we built oversized things for ourselves, some of our puppet shows, oversized characters, and he knew us, and and he called me up and he said, can I come over and meet with you? So he had these sketches. So we were very involved in the creation of those, beyond just building those costumes. He used to come over, see me once a month, pick my brain. I think we even directed some of them.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So it was, it was a dress rehearsal for Pufnstuf.
Right.
So it was 1968. And while we're building the shows in our factory, the head of Kellogg's, head of NBC, would come in and see the progress of the characters. And so Larry, I can't think of his name.
Larry White?
Larry White. Boy, you got it all. Larry White came to me and he said, Marty, why'd you do your own show? And I'll buy it. So that's what we did. We had this character called Luther that was at the World's Fair with Coca-Cola. We had the Coca-Cola Pavilion. And Luther was at the beginning of Pufnstuf. So that was a perfect character to start with. So we got a good group of people. Lenny Weinrib did great voices. He wrote the shows with another guy. I think his name was Rodolphe. And that was the beginning.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of Joe Barbera being sorry he ever asked us to do this. Because in the first 5 years, I think we sold 4 shows. So that knocked out the animation.
Yeah.
Because what happened was animation was the only thing happening until Pufnstuf.
Right.
And the banana splits.
Right.
Which we, both were more than involved with.
Yeah. Well, I heard that you said that you pitched Larry White the show in a train station.
Well, close. We had the deal to pull it together. Mm-hmm. I've got a book together of some dialogue and some sketches, and I knew he was going back by train to New York because he once was in a plane crash and lived to tell the story, so he didn't take planes. So I go to Union Station in L.A., and I ask for his train car, and as I'm standing at the information counter, I get somebody that gives me a hit in my side, and it's Larry White finding out where his train is. So he was right there. I gave him the book. There were no phones on trains then. So on Monday morning, he called me and says, you got it.
Oh, wow.
So that's how it started.
Yeah. And you do, when you're pitching a show here at Sid and Marty Krofft, you don't do scripts or anything. You do these big presentation books, right?
Yeah, you don't do a script ever. And your pictures, they all look at. Right. Scripts, nobody reads. Right. Scripts get you in trouble.
Yeah. I've heard you say in interviews that part of the reason you feel you got the show was because Larry White knew you could deliver. Do you think that a lot of folks in entertainment get the job because they're known for delivering on what they're asked to do?
Probably not.
No?
No, Larry would come by the studio more than once, and he saw a building. We had a 75,000 square foot building with a big shop, costume shop, set shop, building for All in the Family and shows like that, Ringling Brothers, SeaWorld. So, he saw that delivering is everything.
Yeah.
If you deliver and your budget's whacked out, you're not going to get a deal again. So you have to be, responsible for the budget and be creative at the same time, which is tricky because you never have enough money to do these things.
Right.
That's why we almost went broke with Pufnstuf.
Right. The show was a financial problem for you, right?
Big.
Yeah.
But after years, I guess it paid back.
Right.
But we got $54,000 a half hour for 17 episodes, and they cost about $100,000 each. So we took all the money from Six Flags and put it into television.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful what you wish for. Television, I wish for.
Yeah, because you go broke. I know you've been asked this a million times, but let's make it 1,000,001. What does the HR and HR Pufnstuf stand for?
Well, if you ask my brother, it's Royal Highness backwards. If you ask everybody else in the country, it's hand rolls. But it's probably the first one.
Yeah.
And, of course, we've been accused of taking, the question always is, you've been nice to me now. What kind of drugs did you take when you did these shows?
Right.
Well, if you took drugs, you wouldn't have good shows.
Right.
Yeah. And that's really about where it's at.
Yeah.
Never was into drugs. I mean, I did smoke cigarettes. That's a bad drug.
Right. Well, and I think that the show was sort of a product of the time, which the psychedelic stuff and all that, right? Yeah. And it's true that the Beatles were fans of H.R. Pufnstuf, right?
Oh, yeah. While we were shooting, we were getting calls to send kinescopes to London. They wanted to see the shows. We didn't know the college kids and high school kids were going to be into it.
Yeah.
Because it was a colorful head trip. In fact, right now we're in development on something which I can't talk about again. That's called The Psychedelic World of Sid and Marty Krofft.
Oh, wow.
So we'll see what that is.
Yeah, I'm excited.
That's live.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
Right.
Over the several episodes of my podcast, I've interviewed several puppeteers who've talked about getting their start in the Krofft puppetry workshops. Did you start those workshops because you just had so many projects and you needed puppeteers?
Well, it wasn't really a workshop. We started a puppet school.
Yeah.
And we auditioned all kinds of people that answered, and then we brought people in, some women and guys, and we then put them through to school. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we gave that to them. Didn't charge them.
Right. What qualities do you look for in a puppeteer who's going to work for you?
Somebody that shows up on time.
Yeah.
Well, they got to be talented.
Yeah.
They got to be talented. It's just working puppets to start with. And if they have extra qualities, like voices and whatever else, that's just an add-on.
Right. Is there a little bit of a sense of pride that people who you gave a start to in those workshops have gone on to work for the Muppets and lots of television movies?
Yeah, I'd say, that's all good.
Yeah.
We got people from the Muppets that are working for us.
Right, yeah.
So it cuts both ways.
Yeah.
And now the Muppets are the Hensons.
Right.
They sold the Muppets.
Yeah.
Which was too bad, I thought.
Well, Disney's doing a few things with them anyway.
Well, no, Disney, they couldn't probably do what Disney's doing.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so dumb to do that.
Right. Well, in many of your shows, you worked with the incredibly talented Billy Barty. Was he one of your go-to actors for suit performing?
He was special. Mm. He was one of a kind. He was in a lot of our shows. And he not only was in the character, in the suit, but he was a good actor.
Yeah.
A very good actor.
Yeah.
So he was, I remember him in Dr. Shrinker, which I'd like to do again. And he was great in that.
Yeah. Well, in an interview, you said one time that you were producing up to 4 television shows at the same time. How do you manage to spin so many plates all at once?
Well, I should have done drugs then. Okay, but I didn't. Yeah, I had to have roller skates and a golf cart. Yeah, that was not a great idea for us.
Really? Yeah.
It's hard to say no when they keep ordering shows.
Right.
So, that was, I'm sure it made the networks nervous. But, we did Land of the Lost in the mix of that.
Yeah.
And, so we did Electra Woman and Diner Girl, Wonder Bug, Bigfoot and Wild Boy, all that during those 4 shows.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about Land of the Lost because on that show you had suit performers, but you also brought in stop motion animation. Were you and your brother always looking for more creative ways to bring creatures to life?
Well, once we did dinosaurs, we had to figure out what to do. So we found somebody called Wah Chang on Sunset Boulevard who was doing dinosaurs, kind of prehistoric. It's a joke, the double joke. But look, the look of our shows was very simple. Today, I don't know if you can get away with it because the kids have so much technology. So you got to be careful what you do today.
Yeah.
But we think a show that has a great look and a great idea will live on.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about, in 1984, you produced Pryor's Place with Richard Pryor. And it was a show that featured puppets, but also tackled some strong social issues like divorce and child abuse. And it seems like a lot of care went into that production.
Oh, there was. And Richard wanted to do it like that. Mm-hmm. That show only lasted the season because he didn't want to do it anymore. So, that, and we had some great guests on that show. And I'll never forget when he called me in the dressing room. He says, Marty, whatever you do, don't mention my name when you go after guests. I said, of course, Richard, I won't do it. I left the room and I called up whoever. I called up Judy Garland, who wasn't alive. We called up football players, Robin Williams was a guest. And we gave them all gift certificates because we didn't have the money. For Neiman Marcus, $1,500 gift certificates.
Oh, that's nice.
So when I gave it to Robin, I couldn't find him on the set. He was in Beverly Hills shopping at Neiman Marcus.
Spending that gift certificate already. Yeah. Did you wish that Pryor's Place had continued, that you had done more shows?
Yeah, we put a lot of effort in these things, and, it becomes a lot easier when you can do more shows.
Right.
So, and that show was meaningful. I'm just thinking, the Justice of the Supreme Court of California, I had her on the show.
Wow.
Rose Byrd.
Yeah.
Who was well known at the time.
Yeah.
And controversial.
Well, I wanted to ask also about DC Follies, and it was a show that was aimed more towards adults than kids necessarily. Was it hard to make the jump to more adult television, or was it pretty easy?
No, we had done adult shows before.
Yeah.
So no, we had 10 writers like they do on a sitcom, and that was a show that worked. That show still holds up.
Yeah.
I mean, we made Richard Nixon, when that country hated him, into a comedy star.
Yeah.
So we were good there. The one thing I got to tell you, going back to Pryor,
sure,
is that Pryor calls me up one day. I did have some problems back and forth, but he would call me every night and not talk about the show. So he calls me up and he says, look, I'm going to start a black film company. I want to have a press conference, and I want you to run it. I said, look, I'm not a PR guy. Oh, no, I want you to run it. Can we do it at lunch on the set? So I agreed to do it. And the lady from the New York Times says to him, why'd you do this show? Because of all the drugs you did and you're paying back the kids? He said, no. Do you know Marty Krofft? She said, no. Well, if you knew him, let me tell you something. If you get him in your office, it's much easier to say yes to him and get him the hell out. So that's how I got that show done.
So just badgering him.
It wasn't easy to get him.
Yeah.
It was yes, no, yes, no.
Yeah. Well, getting back really quick to DC Follies, I've heard you say that you had politicians calling, asking you why they weren't on the show.
We had a lot of people asking. People think, well, did they ask, the ones that you did, you were going to get in trouble for them? No, it's the First Amendment of the Constitution.
Yeah.
So we got away with that one.
Yeah.
But, we would get calls from political football players. Why don't you have a puppet of me? Well, because you don't look like a puppet.
And the show was never mean-spirited, right?
No,
yeah.
No. We didn't go off the edge of the cliff with it. No, it was likable, and we made everybody likable.
Yeah.
Funny.
Right.
Funny's important.
Right.
And we were funny with that show.
Yeah, as you said, you made Richard Nixon a comedy star.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in 2015, you created a new show called Mutt Stuff. And how did the development for that show come about?
Well, I went to my brother and I said, look, let me create a show for kids again, because we hadn't done one for over 20 years when they changed the law. The government changed the law where you couldn't own anything anymore. The studios couldn't own anything before that, or the networks. So I decided to do it. I said, okay, well, let's do it. So we thought to do a show. My brother said, we always wanted to do a show with kids, puppets, and dogs. You can't mess with that.
Right.
So I brought it to Nick, and in L.A., I waited for the president to come to L.A. I was at the Four Seasons in a boardroom. I had 5 sketches. And she said, oh, that looks good. What do you want for the pilot? I said $400,000, which was way under. So that didn't work out. They dropped it. Then I got them to pick up another pilot for more money. And then when we were doing that, they picked up 20, 20, 20, and 13 shows. So we have 73 shows.
Wow.
Plus 2 1-hour specials.
Mm-hmm.
But that thing didn't go after that, especially when the management changed at Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
But I've been used to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That happens quite
All the
regularly.
time.
All the time. Yeah. On Mutt Stuff, HR Pufnstuf made a cameo or was on there a couple times. Is that the last we'll see of him, or are there things working where you're always thinking about bringing him back?
Well, we're always thinking of bringing him back.
Yeah.
We're going to do another big project with him.
Oh, great.
And then, of course, it's his 50th anniversary. And sometime next year, we're going to get the star on Hollywood Boulevard
Oh,
for the
excellent.
50th anniversary.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can't tell you the date.
We'll be looking for it for sure. What do you think it is about the characters that you create that makes them so have longevity and have people love them for so many
Well, I don't
years?
know. I guess we know how to do likable.
Yeah.
And likable's the whole thing. So the character's got to be interesting.
Right.
So that's in the way we name them. Stupid Bat, Seymour the Spider,
Yeah, Witchy Poo.
Witchy Poo, yeah,
Yeah.
and on.
Well, you're known for shows with puppets and actors in suits, and you mentioned Wonderbug. You made a puppet out of a dune buggy. Out of all your shows, which puppets were the most complex to create, do you think?
Boy, that's a tough one. I have no idea.
No?
No. I think, they're all complicated.
Yeah, in their own way.
And by the way, in all our shows, whether they're prime time or the kid shows, they always seem to have puppets in them.
Yeah.
I mean, we created Donnie and Marie, and we had puppets in that. Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell sisters. We had puppets in that. Truck Shackley and the Texas Critters. So we always kept the puppeteers alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in the past, when you were starting out, you had to deal with standards and practices. And now you have what you call like interference from the studios. How do you muscle through getting through that interference and finally creating your show?
Well, I don't know. I got to tell you, I don't know that there's interference. I think practice and standards were trying to protect themselves. Don't touch this other character. There's all kinds of rules that changed all the time. But on Mutt Stuff, I mean, there was contribution from the execs. I wouldn't call it interference.
Okay.
So I think, they kind of leave us alone because they don't get what we're doing. Right?
Yeah. What are some elements that you feel make a strong pitch for a kid's TV show?
Something that they say yes to.
Yeah.
But, going back to the puppets, without the puppeteers, we had nothing. Tony Urbano, all the puppeteers we had, the one, Tom Fountain, and on, Larson, what's his first name?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know Larson?
Yeah, I'd have to look
We
it
had
up.
so many puppeteers.
Yeah.
I always tell people, how do you find your puppeteers? I would go down to Times Square, and I'd go to the corner, and I'd say, hey, come over here. Do you want to be a puppeteer?
Yeah. Well, I know that there's still, as I said, the people I talk to are still, hold those workshops dear. And the other day I was working on a production, and Alan Troutman was wearing a Krofft Productions jacket from,
Jeez.
like the 80s.
You were over at Henson.
Yeah, I was over at Henson, yeah.
You know how I know that? My daughter's over there.
Oh, your daughter?
My daughter's a makeup artist.
Oh, okay.
So she's doing that show.
Yeah.
So she couldn't believe it. She sent me a picture of the jacket.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty great. I had to get a picture of it too. Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah. Well, Sid and Marty Krofft Pictures has lasted way longer than, we mentioned Hanna-Barbera. Why do you think you've lasted longer than some of these other studios?
I guess the biggest thing is, I tell this to everybody, never give up. Because if you give up on Tuesday, there is no Wednesday.
Right.
And Wednesday could have been the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you blew it.
You mentioned Kendra and Deanna works here.
Deanna runs things here, and she's a great producer.
Yeah.
Christina's got a couple of kids, and she's an actress, so she's making a comeback again. So, I got my daughters are all great.
Yeah. Well, and you've worked with your brother for so many years, and you're working with your daughters. How do you make a successful company while working with family? Because sometimes I know families can butt heads and stuff like that.
Well, that families, it's not easy, but, there's nothing better than keeping your family together.
Yeah.
So you have to, it's not easy, but it's rewarding.
Right. Well, Marty, do you have any plans to retire, or are you going to keep going?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah. I'm going to be in a 747, and I'm going to jump out of the window of the airplane.
Don't do that.
Right? Retiring, let me tell you, you retire, you go home, you watch daytime television, and in a month you're dead.
Yeah.
So now I don't, what am I going to do? This is the only thing I know how to do.
Yeah. Well, finally, I want to ask here, what has been the highlight of your career so far?
This interview.
I'm honored.
You know what? Yeah, I'm doing it with a puppeteer. A performer. Well, the highlight, there are, so many, I think it's just a matter of it's great to just being able to employ a lot of people and give them, make their dreams come true. Mm-hmm. And look, at the beginning, we must have hired 25 production assistants. One of them's the head of the news at NBC, one's running Post at Fox. They just, they've gone on to do great things. So when we tried to hire them out of college, we wanted to make sure that they want to be in the business. So, there's always someone that you look. I mean, I just look for people out of left field.
Yeah.
And the important part is to tell the truth.
Yeah.
So that people know what the hell you're thinking.
Well, Marty, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to me today.
You got it. Happy to do it.
Many thanks to Marty Krofft for sitting down with me for this episode. For links to the Kroffts' website and social media, as well as links to some of the things we discussed, visit the show notes for this episode number 36, over at underthepuppet.com. I would also like to thank Deanna Pope, Christine Bedoja, Irene Onkley, and Donna Kimball for helping make this interview possible. Well, now it's time to announce the winner of episode 35's giveaway. The question was, what was the name of the comic book store where Jagetto performed his first official puppet show? The answer, Chapel Hill Comics. And the winner is Jeff Peterson. Jeff takes home a Super Grover Funko Pop signed by Sesame Street puppeteer Eric Jacobson and Super Grover himself. Congratulations, Jeff. Now for this episode, the prize was graciously donated by Puppet Pelts. Puppet Pelts is the one-stop shop for puppet builders, supplying everything from fleece to fur to eyeballs. And big news, they finally have gift cards available, and this month's prize is a $50 Puppet Pelts gift card. To win, all you have to do is answer this question. Where was Marty Krofft when Walt Disney gave him some business advice? When you find the answer, send it in an email to underthepuppet@gmail.com with the subject line giveaway, and you'll be entered to win. All entries for this giveaway must be received by January 15th, 2020. The winner will be chosen at random from all the correct entries and be announced on the next episode of the show. Good luck, and a big thank you to Puppet Pelts for supplying the prize for this episode. Find out more about Puppet Pelts on Instagram at username PuppetPelts, or check out their shop online at puppetpelts.com. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. I welcome your feedback via email at hello@SaturdayMorningMedia.com or via Twitter, where the show is at username Under the Puppet. You can also find the show on Instagram at Under the Puppet or on Facebook, where you can find us by searching Under the Puppet. I want to hear your suggestions for questions I should be asking and for future guests. Let me know who I should be talking to. Thank you so much for listening. Talk to you next time right here on Under the Puppet. This episode of Under the Puppet featured music by Dan Ring and was edited by Steven Staver. Under the Puppet is a production of Saturday Morning Media and made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly pledge for as little as $1 a month. Patrons get new episodes before they are released, behind-the-scenes information, and exclusive bonus episodes. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly pledge today. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. Under the Puppet is copyright 2020 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Bachogo executive producer, all rights reserved. www.SaturdayMorningMedia.com. The new Under the Puppet app is here for iOS and Android, and it is absolutely free. Download it today to get all the episodes of Under the Puppet in one place. Plus, you'll hear new episodes before their release, get exclusive bonus episodes, and more. Just search for Under the Puppet in the Apple App Store for iOS or on Google Play. You can also visit SaturdayMorningMedia.com/apps for direct links. The free Under the Puppet app for iOS and Android. Download it today.
You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.